this part is about archetypes, where you identify an archetype for your client. Now, the archetype is like a characteristics or personality types that they're born with or they've come through in this life with. It's like they'll show these characteristics time and time again. It'll show patterns in their life. It'll show why they create situations that they create. There's a mixture of archetypes in the guide, so you can open up your manual and see the list, and I'm going to go through some of them with you because there are some ones that are really common and ones that I don't hardly get. So I'm going to talk you through some of the archetypes. The first one is father figure. That's someone that likes to protect and look after other people, and they're generally quite balanced. Then there's the mother figure. The mother figure again likes to mother, likes to look after. When those two come up, they're actually quite balanced people. You'll find that they don't often play victim or martyr, but they just play this nice, stable character. And this is really what they've come in with in this life. Then you've got the child. So that's someone that's quite childlike and perhaps a little silly and sees things from a child's point of view. Even an adult can be quite childlike. It's a nice, innocent type of energy. So all these energies are quite good. Next one is the wise old woman or the wise old man. You can often see someone go, gee, shit, they're wise, or they're a wise old woman. This person has come in with just knowing things. They have information beyond their years, and they're very knowledgeable. So this archetype's a really good one, and you can often already see it in them. They just look the type. The hero, this is the person that's the champion, defender, rescuer, likes to play the hero. It's not as much a negative archetype, and it doesn't come up that often, but it's just someone that plays hero. The downtrodden. The downtrodden is someone that's they're just knocked down. They're pessimistic and things have been hard and they've sort of been beaten up by life. And it's a fairly negative archetype, and they'll find that life time and time again beats them down. The next one we have trickster, deceiver, liar, troublemaker. Now this person, as you'll know, is what it says. They deceive you, they trick you, they're not very honest. So it's not a very good one to come up with if you've got someone on the table. It really doesn't come up that often. But the next one does, which is victim. When that comes up, it means that unfair things are done to them. They feel like a victim. I sometimes get someone saying, I'm not a victim, I don't think I'm a victim. And I'll say, yeah, that's okay. But do you have unfair things happen to you? And they say, yes, or you'll find out an age when unfair things start to happen. And look, sometimes these archetypes aren't like really obvious, and these are the people with quite light energies, especially, and they're quite evolved. But some people that come in with heavy energies, when you find an archetype, it's like them to the T. So just understand that people are at different levels, and they're also changing, throughout their years in this life. So sometimes they may say, yes, I used to be like that, and I'm less now. And you say, good, because that is what you need to change from. You don't need to be like a victim anymore. But victim, it's a very common one, but it's really good for the client to understand that they're playing victim, and by playing the victim, they'll attract ways to be victimized. It's when you need to say, you need to now realize you have a choice and that you can look at things differently, and you change your reaction. Instead of going into poor me, you're going to say, right, what am I going to do to go forward, and really start changing the mindset so that they no longer have this old pattern of being a victim. The helper feels better giving and assisting. The helper's always on committees and helping and doing things for others, and they like to do that. Now that's a nice archetype. They might spend more time helping others than helping themselves, though, but it's a nice archetype. The martyr, classic archetype. When the martyr comes up, I'll be able to say, well, you always put yourself second, and others are first, and you're the one that's the sacrificer, you're the one that takes the blame or just works harder than everybody else. and you actually set it up that way. You don't even realize it, but you're the one that said, yes, I'll do it. Yes, put your hand up. So this martyr type is a really good archetype for them to see. You're playing the martyr and you're putting the responsibility on them so that they can see that they're saying yes to what everyone else is asking them to do, and they can now realize that they don't have to play martyr anymore, that when they start looking after them first, then they become less resentful of having given so much to others. The martyr is quite a common one for even healers, for therapists, because they find a profession where they're giving and giving and giving. Teachers and nurses are also this type of archetype. I mean, they're fantastic people, but they do it to the point that it's detrimental to their health. And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's great to give, great to serve, but not to the point that it's detrimental, that it's destroying you, because then you're not much good to anyone later, are you? So I really make that point clear. The monster antagonist instills fear. So some people play the monster in this life, out there to get people and instill fear and mean and nasty. Doesn't come up that often. The other one is the fool, which is someone that's naive, gullible, easily fooled. It comes up now and then. So it's just so people can be aware that they're not going to play the fool anymore. If you're saying, well, it's coming up the fool archetype, they may want to then choose to make wiser decisions and perhaps seek outside counsel and advice. The outcast, which is someone that feels different, unstable, or sneered at, means that they've been ostracized and they don't feel part of the community. And sometimes they're people or clients that feel they've been like this their whole life. So it's time for them to reconnect and time for them to be part of the community. The devil, now that's the worst one. Greed, power, soulless, dark. It's just a very dark energy. I've actually never had that one come up, but you never know. It's useful to have if you need extra information, and perhaps when you get to spirit course, it will be utilized more there. The temptress, gigolo, sensuous, luring manipulator. Someone that plays the temptress, couldn't say it, a bit of a teaser and so forth, just out there to play with people. Doesn't come up that often. The entrepreneur, actually I just had one yesterday, which is innovative, sharp, astute. That's when someone may be emotionally balanced and so forth and have the business side of their life together, and they can come up as an entrepreneur. So it's quite a good one, and when it has come up, the person or the client that I've had said, yeah, that's me, no worries. Spiteful, two-faced, jealous, hurt, vindictive. Someone that's spiteful, they're two-faced, so what they're saying isn't necessarily what they're thinking. So if they come up, then it gives your client food for thought. Not that it's really nice to say that that's what they are, but you can just say it's an archetype that's come through. So if you get an archetype that's not that nice to tell your client, or not that flattering, you may just like to use the odd word from the descriptive side of it, and perhaps test for a word to use, just one word. But most of the time, you'll get something like martyr and sacrificer and and victim. They're the biggest ones. The other one I do get is disconnected, which means they feel alone and they withdraw from people and they feel different. So it just lets them know that it's time to get reconnected. That's one that I also get. Wounded healer. Wounded healer, quite common. People that do healing do it because they've had a lot of injuries or pain or suffering or emotional trauma. So this one will be a common one for the wounded healers. So they have unresolved problems, and that's why they started healing. And hopefully they get them resolved through being a healer too. The warrior, which is someone that's always out for a fight, always out to conquer, fights for justice and fights everyone's battles. There are people like that, and I just remind them, I say, it's great that you want justice, but you need to like put your energy into the peace of things or what you're trying to achieve, because when you're fighting, when you're in battle, it's just a negative energy that's stirring it up, creating more. So it's all so the energy needs to be put on what outcome they want, which should be a nice, calm outcome. The ruler, which desires power and dominates others. So someone that's authoritarian and someone that likes to get power and gain control. And the last one, the jester, light-hearted, playful, easygoing. That one, someone that's kind of fun and light. You know what? I don't get a lot of jesters, probably because they don't really need healing. They're the light people. I get more of the people that come to me, more with the heavy archetypes. So those light ones, you'll find you don't really get, because they're just, singing through life and playing through life and having a good time. Now we're at stage 1.3, which is finding the archetype for the client. These are characteristics, personality types that the client has come through with. It's like what they're born with. So what we do is identify this information for them, so it gives them a clearer picture of who they are and makes them more aware of their patterns and values and beliefs and characteristics. In the archetypes, you can see there's a number next to each one. They go from 1 to 22. So you can just test which number and then you locate what's next to the number. I'm going to be working from a locked muscle to an unlocked muscle to find which archetype. I bring the muscle up, I put them right in front of me, and I ask the question, which archetype is Emily? And I ask for a locked, apply pressure, maintain the arm. She's maintaining the arm. So now I ask, is it 1 to 10? So that way I don't have to count them all, and it stays strong. So now I ask, is it 10 to 20, and the muscle changes. So now I know that her archetype is between those numbers 10 to 20. So bring it back to a locked position. So maintain the arm so it stays strong. Is it 10 to 15? No change. So now I'll just count up in ones. So I can go 16 and it changes. Did you see that change? It just dropped. 16 is the entrepreneur. And there's a little bit of a description next to it. It means innovative, sharp, astute. Generally means someone that thinks outside the box. So, thinking outside the box, you're innovative, you're always looking for new ways to do things. Would you say that matches you?
I would agree with that, yes.
Great, because what I could have brought up is like a victim. That means unfair things are done to you. Does that make sense to you? No. I could have brought up, the fool plays the fool.
Not likely.
No, she says not likely. So there's many others I could have chosen or could have changed on, but it changed on the entrepreneur. So then it reinforces to Emily her archetype, her characteristics, her strengths. And sometimes it brings an awareness, your weaknesses. But this is a real strength type archetype, so it's really good for her to be aware of what it is. Negative life patterns are really interesting to identify for a client or even for yourself. The negative life patterns I came up with about 10 years ago when I saw people with certain patterns, and their patterns were also their sabotages. So that's why I created this list, and I found that the most common negative life patterns that people created were judgment, power, and sacrifice. So what the patterns means is that, like if it comes up judgment, it means that firstly they will judge themselves harshly. They're negative in their head and they create situations that they feel judged by other people. Then this can also transfer on them judging others, and it usually stems from that person being judged as a child or bullied at school. The more you work with these patterns and the more you work with your clients, you start to see how they match. And when you find an age, when you identify an age of when stresses occurred, you'll see this little pattern happening. So when you find the age, you'll just see them feeling judged or the pattern appearing. So they're really quite powerful. In forensic healing, we identified 2. So we can see 2 of their major patterns. So these are things that are happening throughout their life. And if they're changing them, that's really good because they need to move away from the negative life patterns. In the back of the guide, in the appendices, there is an expanded version of all the patterns listed. So you'll be able to read more and see how they apply. There's also some extra information on affirmations that you can also give for the client to say. Power, I'll just give you a bit more information on perhaps another common negative life pattern, which is like power comes up. Power means the person gives away their power. And you'll find that means that they're affected by what's happening on the news or what's happening if their neighbour's angry or relatives angry. They start to think, oh no, maybe it's me, and their power goes and they don't stay centered. They're affected by all of these people around them, and people try to take their power away from them. And the reason why they'll find people trying to take their power away from them or get in situations where they feel disempowered, it is to push them and to get them to change and say, I've had enough, I'm not doing this any longer, and I'm not going to give my power away anymore. And sometimes it does get to that point. Sometimes if people don't change, they get pushed to a certain point where they say, and they just blow up and they lose it, and they say enough is enough, and it forces them to change. So I always suggest to my clients, change these patterns, change it till you're forced into a pattern that's just too harsh to take, or it's just, really tough to deal with. So change your patterns. So the universe isn't keep trying to make you change or trying to get you to have a better life, really, but it's the vibration in them of feeling that way then that attracts that situation to them. So that's the negative life patterns, and you will be choosing 2, and you will be writing the patterns for the client to take home so that they can see how it's occurring in their life, and it gives them power in their life. It gives them something to work with after they've seen you. After you've found the 2 negative life patterns for your client, you then identify the emotion, which will be a negative emotion, that triggers these patterns. That means that when they feel a certain way, they may start they'll trigger their patterns. And I'll give you an example. Let's look at the emotion list. There's a choice of 1 to 17. One of them may be guilt. When they start to feel guilty, and let's say their negative life pattern was giving away their power and judgment, because that's perfect too. When they start to feel guilty, they give their power away, and then they start to feel judged, or they have the negative self-talk, because that emotion of guilt means that they think that then they've done something wrong. So the key will be the opposite, is to feel the opposite to guilt, and it's listed in the guide. Against the emotion is feeling free or freedom. So I tell my clients, when you start to feel guilty, you need to be saying, I choose to feel free, or thank you for reminding me to free myself. Now these statements are written on the client handout that they get to take home after the session, so they can practice incorporating their affirmations to move them and to change their pattern. So they just, I'll tell them when they're feeling like someone's taking their power away or they're feeling judged, they need to change that emotion of the guilt that keeps them in that pattern and to feel free. And they can say, thanks for reminding me to free myself. I choose to free myself. And it distracts them from that same old emotion that they've had, and it moves them in a different direction. And then things start to change for them. So the emotion is really important to start to change the patterns that they're creating. So you'll have a choice of 1 to 17. Another common one will be unsuccessful. Unsuccessful means not good enough. When that comes up, means not good enough. That's what I tell the client. So they now then need to start feeling successful. They need to say, choose to feel successful. And the other ones is resentment. That's quite common. They all come up quite regularly, but there's a few that are quite common. For disempowered is another common one. People just go into feeling disempowered. So the emotion, you find one emotion for them in their healing protocol, and that client will then know where to refocus after the healing session, their emotion, to improve the patterns that they're creating. Now we're going to find our clients' negative life patterns. We're going to find 2, and this will mean a pattern that they keep creating in their life. It will be something that keeps coming to them time and time again. They'll see it throughout their life until they can see what's causing it. So we're going to find 2, and then I'll give a bit more detail on what they are. We're going to find 2 for Emily. So we bring the muscle up. I'm going to use a locked muscle. So I make the command, I like the muscle to be locked. I ask the client to maintain the muscle in that position and to breathe. I place my fingers above the wrist and apply pressure. Maintain the arm, nice and firm. So now I will look at the negative life patterns. The negative life patterns are numbered 1 to 18. So I can just ask which number her negative life pattern is and then check the reference against the number. So I can begin with the arm up, hold it up, and I can count 1 to 10, and the muscle changes. So I know the negative life patterns is between 1 and 10. So maintain the arm, I ask for locked again, 1 to 5, and it stays firm. So I'm going to count up, hold, 6, 7, and it changes on 7. So I check which one 7 represents, and it's judgment. Judgment means that they have negative self-talk. They're always judging themselves. They may beat themselves up about something they did, or saying that's not good enough, or I could have done that better. It's negative self-talk, and this can often come from childhood, a parent that was perhaps judgmental towards them, and this can sometimes transfer to them judging others. It's a very common negative life pattern, but making them aware that they're judging themselves in their head and judging others will help them shift this pattern. Now let's find Emily's second pattern. So I bring the arm back up. I command for a locked, maintain it, nice and strong. So I'll start again, 1 to 10, and I get a change. So again, it's in 1 to 10. Hold, maintain the arm, 1 to 5. Now I'm going to count up 6, 7, 8. And the muscle changes as 8. Now I check what's against 8, and it's letting go. When letting go comes up, it means that this person is hanging on to something. They may hang on to people, they may hang on to beliefs. They need to release this, whatever it is to hang on. They need to just let things go. And so let's ask Emily about the 2 negative life patterns. Well, let's see if she creates them in her life, or she can see a pattern of them making sense. Now, judgment. Can you relate to judging yourself, or you're a perfectionist or something like that?
Yep, very much so.
Okay, and in what way? What would you say to yourself that relates to judgment?
You can do that better, or you could do that better.
Yep, could have done it better. Perfect. She's always judging herself, which means that she's always saying, well, it's not good enough. So that's a perfect example of judgment. Now, letting go, hang on to something. So now, does letting go make any sense to you? It means you hang on to something. Is that something you've been trying to work out, or?
Yep, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Some sort of belief in not letting, I'm not quite sure what the...
You're trying to work it out yourself still, are you?
Yeah.
Okay, so this process helps her work out. She's tried to analyse herself, but we're going to really help her to see what it is that she's hanging on to. And when we get more information It'll make it nice and clear for her. There's an emotions scan chart that you can choose a negative emotion, and this negative emotion for the client will be the emotion that triggers their negative life patterns. So this will be an emotion that they often feel. And opposite the negative emotion is their positive emotion where they need to focus on. So this is where you direct your client on where to focus. Now we're up to stage 1.5, which is where we find the emotion that runs the negative life patterns. This is the way Emily feels, which then creates her patterns. So I bring the arm up in a 45-degree angle. I ask for Emily to maintain her arm in that position. I apply pressure. I'm requesting a locked muscle, and the muscle stays nice and strong. So now I'm going to count from 1 to 17 because there's 17 emotions listed. I'll do it in increments of 10. I ask Emily to maintain the muscle, locked position, apply the pressure, and it's nice and locked and firm. Good. So now I'll do it in increments 1 to 10, and I get a change. So now I'm going to go increments of 5. So maintain, back to a locked. Yes, I make sure it's locked first. Then I say 1 to 5. No change. So I know it's going to be 5 to 10. So maintain the muscle. So I'll go 5, 6, and 7. And I get this shift on 7. So I know it's 7. 7 is guilt. So Emily feels guilty. That's what creates her patterns. And it would make sense when someone is highly judgmental of themselves, then that means that they're not doing it right. They're guilty of not getting it right. So they're beating themselves up and they feel guilty for not getting things how it should be or not being perfect. So this emotion needs to shift. And if you look at the emotion, there's a positive emotion on the opposite side. And it's freedom. Freedom is the opposite or the positive emotion for feeling guilty. So what we now know is that is where Emily now needs to focus her energy and how she needs to feel. She needs to feel free to release this emotion of feeling guilty. Belief systems are things that you believe that are true. They're belief systems that you may not even realize are in your subconscious mind, but you will know what your belief systems are by the very things that you are attracting. And so there's a list in your guide of 18 belief systems, and they're the negative belief systems. For instance, if it comes up a negative belief system on relationships, that would indicate your client has a belief system around relationships that are negative. For instance, I had a client in the other day, and she was brought up by her grandmother because her mother worked and she didn't have a father. Her grandmother took care of her, but yet she was really quite mean and quite judgmental towards her. So she got this belief system as a child that that's how relationships are. They're not nice all the time, and that you get judgment and negativity. And so later, when she, in her adult life, she would attract situations where relationships were that very thing. They were quite negative. Her partner was quite mean to her, yet she still put up with it because as a child, that's what she did. It was like all she knew, and that's what she thinks today. So she needs to redefine her belief system about relationships, that relationships aren't supposed to be like that. They're supposed to be calm and nice and loving the whole time. So belief systems are created usually in childhood, and you can see them by what's coming to you. Like you might have a negative belief system about your self-worth. You may think that you're not really worth much, and you'll see that by how people treat you. If they treat you with respect, It's basically what you think about you. So they're really important to identify, and they're really important to change. So you'll be able to identify one belief system for your client. Now we're going to do stage 1.6, which is on belief systems. Belief systems is something that's held in your subconscious. It's something that you believe, and you often may not be aware of them. But whatever you're attracting in your life right now is to do with your belief systems, what's happening in the subconscious. So what we'll do now is we'll find out Emily's belief systems. It'll be a negative one. Like, for instance, there's some here that say there's a belief system around family. Family could be, now that's a really good one. If it's a negative belief system, this person probably grew up in a family where there was fighting, where there was there may be an abuse, or just a dysfunctional family. So they believe that that's how families are. So that's their belief, and they often end up in dysfunctional relationships because that's what's been programmed. So that's what a belief system is. So let's look at what Emily's is. We bring the arm to a 45-degree angle. Ask Emily to maintain the arm, and I apply pressure, and I'm asking for a locked hold, maintain. So the arm is maintained. It's nice and strong. So now I count from 1 to 18, and I'll do it in blocks of 10. So maintain it. So now I say 1 to 10, and the muscles changed. So I know it's going to be between 1 and 10. So let's take it down to 1 and 5. So maintain the arm, back in a locked. 1 to 5. It's just a gentle shift. There it goes. It's just very gentle. It's like you become tuned as you do the testing. You become tuned to the person, and you feel it also physically in your body. Often you can feel the shift happening in you. I feel it already in my body, but I like the confirmation when I get this here. I can get like 3 confirmations intuitively, I may know, and I feel it in my body, and then I get the change, the confirmation with the energy shift. So it makes you really confident that the answers you're getting are accurate. So now let's count 1 to 5. So I'll count. Maintain the arm. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I got a change on 3, which is around self-worth. So Emily would have a negative belief system relating to her self-worth. Somehow she has some belief that she may think she's only worth so much, or she may think that her self-worth is dependent on something that she does. So if Emily's got this negative belief system around her self-worth, and she had her 2 patterns of judgment and letting go, and the emotion that keeps her patterns running is feeling guilty, then I would put it together and say that she thinks that maybe she can only have good self-worth if things are done correctly, perfectly, and if they're not, then she feels guilty. So this negative belief about things have to be always perfect stops her from going forward, because things are never perfect. It's never done exactly how we wish it to be done. But her self-worth, she thinks that is dependent upon her self-worth when it's done perfectly, and that will be her negative belief system. She needs to shift this belief system about her self-worth. Things don't have to be done perfectly, that she's good enough just as she is. And this will free her up and enable her to go forward. Now let's see what Emily thinks about what I've been saying. Does this relate? Does this make any sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Have you found that you've tried to go forward and perhaps a block, or does any of these patterns make sense?
Yes, I've even felt the guilt thing as well.
Okay. All right. So we're actually making some sense for her, but she's probably never really been able to put it all together, and probably not realised why she gets stuck. She mentioned, did you say before, you start something and then don't finish it, or?
Yeah. I might go to do something and maybe not be right or how I think it should be, and then I might feel guilty about it. Yeah.
Okay, so again, she's doing the judgment on it. She's probably, as she said, it may not be right or may not be right for her or whatever. So this judgment thing, and then the guilt, and then a belief about her self-worth is what's blocking her life. So when a client understands this, we give them information for them to go forward in their life, that they can start seeing how they're creating these patterns in their life and start changing them. So this is fantastic information for just getting the profile of a person before you even start working on them.